heading into the weight room as a cyclist or triathlete this year, but didn't really see the gains that you wanted on the bike? Or maybe you're just starting in and you're following all this research and people on social media telling you what you need to do? Well, if you go into the gym and lift heavy stuff without understanding these three things that we're going to talk about today, you're going to have a very frustrating and possibly injury experience as you go into the gym. That can be frustrating. Just a lot. So when it comes to actually building a strength training program for cyclists and triathletes, it can be really confusing these days. There's lots of people on social media and lots of articles out there now that are saying lift heavy stuff, and they're looking at the research articles. And while this is important, they actually miss the three keys that you have to understand and really, truly, deeply know before you can go in and start reading the research and applying it that way. Now, one of the challenges we have with research, before we get into our 3 points, is that it's very reductionist. I had a great conversation about this with Alan Lim over an episode, I forget what number it was, but I'll post the link down below, on the Strong Savvy Cyclist and Triathlete podcast, where we talked about how science has become too reductionist, and coaches are so focused on the research that they're missing the forest for the trees. So let me make this easy for you to understand. When it comes to building a strength training program off of research, and I can probably name 5 to 10 different videos right now where the person does a really great job of explaining the research articles, and it's very clear they read the abstract and the conclusion. Well, guess what? I read a whole bunch of articles about how to build a rocket ship, and I've got a rocket ship outside right now, and I will pay you $1 billion to get in there because we're going to beat Elon Musk and SpaceX to Mars today, because I read all the research articles. Don't ask how I got the stuff for it, because I can't tell you how I did that, but I want you to get in the rocket ship and ride it to Mars right now because I read all the research. I don't understand physics, but I read the abstracts and the conclusions. You would not get in that rocket ship. Are you crazy? Couldn't pay you $1 zillion, all the money in the world. You would not strap yourself into that. And yet people are jumping into these strength training programs that are based off of research and missing the forest for the trees. So let's talk about the 3 things that you need to know before you go in and lift heavy stuff. Number 1 is that when we ride our bikes or we swim, bike, or run, there is very little resistance in the body for the tissues to be able to adapt. And in fact, we're often in poor positions. So joint position is going to determine how the muscle is going to work, or put more succinctly, joint position dictates muscle function. What that means is the alignment of my joints is going to determine if the muscles are going to do their jobs well or not. Now, this is really, really important because as cyclists, we tend to have very poor upper body movement. We tend to be in a little bit of kyphosis or rounded forward shoulders. Our head tends to come forward. And this is where a lot of cyclists and triathletes are getting into the gym and lifting heavy stuff for their legs and their lower body and their core, but completely ignoring the upper body, or doing something like some bicep curls and shoulder presses and leaving. Your body works as a whole system. So there's something called the fascia. We've all heard of that at this point. The foam roller. I've got 3 of them over here. Actually, nope, they're right back there. There it is. It's got the Israel Premier. You got one of these, right? So we all have these and we all know about the fascia at these points, except the problem is most of us ignore it. There's a number of fascia that connect the upper body with the lower body. These are called trains or systems if you follow the Thomas Myers approach. And what this means is that the upper body is going to affect the lower body and vice versa. But most of us ignore them. So a strength training program should be built first based around the postures that you have. And we have to unwind certain postures and positions that you've been in as a cyclist or triathlete to be able to better deal with the forces and see better results. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that the tissues of the body, the tendons, the ligaments, and the bone actually need time to be able to adapt to the loads you're going to place on them, because swim, bike, and run doesn't do enough to allow you to healthily and easily adapt to them. Now, what happens when you lift heavy stuff, when you're squatting heavy or deadlifting heavy, the trabeculae actually fracture, they break. This is what the great powerlifters and bodybuilders understand and why they're only in the gym 2 to 3 days a week. They're creating microfractures and stress on the tissues and damage to the tissues but then going and allowing the body to recover from those stresses. And that is really important. And one of the big reasons why so many cyclists and triathletes are having back injuries and hip injuries is because they don't understand the process of the bones and the connective tissue and the tissues of the body needing to repair themselves. As a cyclist, you cannot head into the gym after being on this thing for 6-8 months out of the year and expect the bones and the body to be able to recover from the adaptations you're asking it to do, or from the stress to get the adaptations, because it hasn't done that most of the year. And this is where we get into our third and final point for today's video. Again, this is something that most people, when I tell you, you're like, well, duh, that makes sense. Yeah, there's research out there, but nobody's talking about it because it's not sexy. We have all, and I include myself in this, when I started in my fitness journey as a coach and as an athlete, we all think that energy is everlasting. So as long as we're eating enough, we can keep training. And we think that it is just an expansive. It goes on forever. It's continuous. But in fact, research from over 20 years ago shows that it is a constrained energy model. What that means is that there's only so much energy the body can intake before the regular processes of the body are negatively affected. And that means you're not going to get the adaptations you need out of your sport. This is where overtraining happens, injuries happen. And this is a screenshot from Joel Jamieson's Recover to Win program. I don't get any money off of this. It's not an affiliate link or anything. You can check out his stuff at 8weeksout.com. He's been doing this for 30-something years. He's one of the best in the world at the conditioning side of things. He's a good person to get hooked into. But what this energy model shows is that it's a constrained energy model. And this is where a lot of cyclists and triathletes are going wrong, alongside going into the gym and lifting heavy stuff. We think that going into the gym and crushing ourselves and not being able to walk for 3 days is helping us improve our swim, bike, or run. But it could not be further from the truth. In fact, what is going to help you is going into the gym and doing just enough work that you're getting the mind-muscle connection to work better. You're becoming more efficient and effective in the movements, as well as you're leaving something on the table. So the quality of movement is very high. You're getting just enough stress on the system, RPE 7, maybe RPE 8. But the next morning you wake up and go, oh, I actually feel a little bit sore. And after an hour, you're like, oh, I don't feel anything at all. Perfect. That's what we're looking for. So these are the 3 things that you need to consider. Number 1 is that the body is not used to those types of stresses. So you have to give it time, especially the connective tissues and the bones need more time than the muscles to adapt. Anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks, depending on what research you read and what tissues you're dealing with. Again, the bodybuilders and powerlifters really understand this. And this is where cyclists heading into the gym or triathletes heading into the gym following a bodybuilder approach, 3-day split, are having a lot of issues and injuries and not seeing the results, is because you're driving the wrong tissue adaptations. You're not getting enough energy, that's number 2, to be able to get the tissue adaptations. And lastly is understanding that we have to be in better joint positions. Now, I know I did those out of order, but all of this ties together to allow you to be able to move heavy stuff. Now, what if I told you there are lots of diamonds on the ground for you to pick up to see easy wins on the bike or the swim or the run? And that is by doing the movements with more intent, the mind-muscle connection, and feeling where you are in space. That is how you get more results from your strength training. It's not from doing more weights, it's from doing the movement more effectively and more efficiently. And I talk about this in my book, Strength Training for Cycling Performance. Now, I know a bunch of you may say, well, there's nothing on the wall. He has a bike. He doesn't really look like a cyclist. So here we go. Now I look like a cyclist. Safety first. So remember, before you go into the weight room, you cannot just read research and put together a program based off of that. You have to understand these 3 things. There's constrained energy model in the body. There is not endless energy. You can't just eat more and train more. Number 2 is the tissues need time to adapt. And number 3 is joint position dictates muscle function. If you found today's video to be useful, and I think I look ridiculous in this helmet, pretty sure I do. So if you think I look ridiculous in the helmet, hit subscribe, comment down below. What have you found interesting about this video? And what have you found actually works for you in your strength training for cycling or triathlon? Till next time, remember, train smarter, not harder, because it is all about you. That looks ridiculous. I can't wear this. Okay, we're done here.